SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Discover Covington County Hospital's swing bed program, offering comprehensive care for patients transitioning from acute hospital care to home. With a focus on rehabilitation, we ensure a smooth journey back to your home environment. Choose Covington County Hospital, where your health care matters.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
Man, yeah, and a delightful one it is out there. I enjoyed a quick trip down to Macomb, Mississippi, Pike County, addressing the Macomb Rotary Club. Great folks down there. Really enjoyed being with them and talking a little bit about stuff going on. It was really good. Good folks. And one thing I noticed, Rhino, on the way down I-55 there, I spoke in New Albany back right after the ice storm, about a month after the ice storm or so. And I noted all the down trees along the route as you get kind of in the northern tier of 55 there. And then, of course, all the way through New Albany, that route through there. Well, there's a section, we had the tornadoes that came through not so long ago. There's a section in Lincoln County, which was hit pretty hard. Lincoln, Lawrence, and Lamar counties hit hard by the recent outbreak. And just as tornadoes do, it's a stretch, not very large. Pine trees are just twisted up and down and completely topped. Just nothing but stalks standing up from the ground. Just amazing the power of those storms. But what an interesting contrast you would expect to see in Mississippi, where you got down trees from an ice storm that came through in the northern counties. And then you got the down trees from tornado that came through in the southwest counties.
I don't know. It might be argued that you'd only see that in Mississippi.
That's true. Where we kind of have all the climates in one state, right? Man, oh, man. And it was just
we're also one of those states that's perfectly positioned to usually get ice instead of snow.
That's right, which is more devastating typically. I think the difference was the area affected by the ice was much larger, of course, than tornadoes are, than the wind affected the tornadoes. But the ice, pretty much you see the entire tree just kind of falling down. But with the tornado, it's like it's been ripped off. And it was just a small stretch. You know how there's some areas of 55 where you got a pretty wide median, and it's usually planted, it's treed up, and other foliage. And it was just that small stretch right there at Brookhaven, Lincoln County. Man, I hope everybody is recovering. I've seen some reports on that. I know some folks are still without their homes, of course. Their homes were completely devastated, and they're trying to manage that situation, still taking donations, I believe. So, man, let's pray that the destructive weather, at least, is out of here for a while. Delightful today for sure. It's more like typical May weather. That's one of my favorite months of the year. I think most people would agree with that. May and October, similar in terms of the temperature range. You get those big high pressures, bright blue skies, low humidity. So
And the northern half of the Magnolia State today can brag and say that they are among the nicest weather in the country.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So,
according to the weather people.
How about that? Well, let's enjoy it. Let's celebrate it. So, appreciate Dave filling in. Wow. What'd you let everything go all hell in a handbasket, as they say, in a short 48 hours? Stuff happening on the national scene, stuff happening, of course, here in the state, with the governor saying, yep, we don't need this special session. I know he was on with Richard yesterday. That has actually made some national news because in focus, of course, is redrawing the congressional districts. I think it's fair to say that on the national landscape, the special session called by the governor to reconfigure the Supreme Court districts, that's more of an issue that has some applicability within our state, not on the national stage. The national stage, in the national political landscape, the concern more, of course, is about what does this redistricting look like as it relates to the United States House of Representatives. Now, in the state of Mississippi, we have 4 districts, as you know, although our Constitution thinks we have 5. At least vis-a-vis the ballot measure process. Who did that, man? Golly. Oh, this will never change. This is permanent, right? But I digress. So that's what's going on. Now, the governor, I believe, came out yesterday, Rhino, and he was on Fox News yesterday. Like I said, some degree of national news because we are one of those states that could, based on control of our legislature by Republicans, could redo these maps in such a way that Congressman Benny Thompson would have to return to Mississippi. And he would no longer represent a district that pretty much is a shoo-in, the way it is drawn now for him. And I just want to once again appeal to the people that continue to support him and send him to Washington. He is not in your best interest. You would do much better. In fact, he harms you. He would do better if he went bye-bye.
Folks that he voted against the pumps while his own constituents were underwater.
Incredible. That's just unfathomable. But let's send him home. And I promise you would get better. You know what they would have a hard time understanding? You and I talked about this, and we've actually posed this question to Representative Robert Johnson last week. He's the House Minority Leader, a Democrat from Adams County. And I know they have a hard time comprehending it because they've been told all their life Republicans hate you. You would get better representation. And I believe the quality of your life would improve, and that in Mississippi, if your Congressman Benny Thompson were replaced with a high-quality Republican candidate and representative. I do believe that. And they would say, no, that's not possible. Republicans hate us. They're racist. They're this, they're that, right? All the stuff that they define us as. We got to make an effective appeal and deliver a message that resonates with them. I go back once again, I know I'm repeating myself, to the president, who I think handled it perfectly when he ran the first time. What do you got to lose? Try something different. It ain't working out very well for you. These people don't care about you. They care about power. And the only thing they ever promise, but never works out as promised, is I'm going to take their money and I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to skim off the top while I do it. That's pretty much their entire policy agenda, which is misguided and misleading at a minimum. So what do you got to lose? I do think we ought to pursue this, but the governor said between now and the 2027 elections. So it's not clear whether or not that means something would get done. He'd call them back. Let's redraw it. What we do with the fact that we've already had primaries, that's a legal question that's over my pay grade. I've heard numerous opinions and slants on that. I don't know what the truth is on that at this point. I'm not sure anybody does. And it's one of those things that's in the so-called gray area, right, that at this point we're not really sure. But that's what the governor said, that, yeah, I'm going to take on this redistricting project. Now, I believe that the president could, I think, apply some pressure to the governor. And I think the governor has a great relationship with the president. And if the president does that, the governor just may see fit to go ahead and get that done now, before the midterms. But my guess is, knowing the governor, that he's going to make sure that there is some path, some legal, mechanical way to, I guess, negate the primaries we've had and recontest those. Because otherwise the president wouldn't really benefit from it in terms of the remaining 2 years in his term. I think he's wanting to make sure that, and all seats count, that the Republicans maintain control of the House for his remaining 2 years after elections this November. We shall see. Interesting issue for sure. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio, Gordon Fellows on at 11:05. He's president of the Mississippi Bankers Association, because it looks like we got us a new Fed chair. Stay with us.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're like...
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Just again, passing on what the governor said with respect to redistricting. Said, just to clarify, I said I expect lawmakers to redraw congressional lines between now, in all caps, and 2027 elections, ! I also expect them to redraw legislative and Supreme Court lines between now, and 2027 elections. And there's a good article at supertalk.fm that explains all this, that was published on our site yesterday. Appreciate our news team for doing that. So that's what the governor says. I don't know what that means, Rhino, in terms of timing. Just don't know. And I don't know that he's going to tip his hand on that. But between now and 2027 elections, according to my calculation, that's about 18 months. So that we have an 18-month window in which he could, implore. I say that because it could happen during the 2027 session, because that's within that time frame. He could call a special session outside of the official session, between now and the official session when they come back in January, or after they sine die next year and sometime in March. Between then. But then you got the midterms, which don't come up till 28, so you'd have plenty of time. The question is he considering something now that would alter what we have coming up in the midterms? And that means perhaps the primaries are nullified and we figure out some legal way to do a redo on that, on the primaries. If there is such a thing. I'm not sure.
I mean, it would basically just be calling special elections, and it would basically be a whole new election day, and it'd be a headache. It could be done.
Yeah.
But I think realistically, the governor's not going to call a special session unless he thinks there's enough interest from the legislature to actually get it done.
I agree.
And I don't think there's enough interest from the legislature, because just look at the laundry list of things that didn't get done this year, and you can put at least part of the blame for that on this notion of, well, push it to next year and we can campaign on it.
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with that, and I think that's a very plausible theory. It's just not sure. Now, the one who's probably made the most noise about it is Shad White. He was also on the program with Lucian yesterday, I believe, and he, of course, the state auditor, and he's demanding that the lines be redrawn right now. He's pretty much come out and said that. Andy Gibson, of course, has announced that he is a candidate for governor. He has, leaned into it, but I don't know, Rhino, if he's just demanded, and been quite as firm and as clear on let's get back in there and redraw the lines now.
Well, his initial stance that he put out on social media was to use caution.
Right. That's right. You're right.
And then after the governor broke the news yesterday on mornings here on SuperTalk, I don't know if it was after or right before, but the timing was a bit funny to me because it looks like it gave him just enough cover to come out in favor of redistricting without really having to worry about it because it's likely not going to happen this year.
I believe that's all right. It's likely that is where we stand. Now, we should, of course, point out, and I know you guys talked about it yesterday, but the governor has rescinded the special session. He's canceled it, essentially. That was scheduled for next Wednesday.
We talked about that earlier this week.
We did, yeah, to redraw the district lines, Supreme Court district lines. So no need to do that because the court ruled, no, your lines are good. So no need to get back under the dome. I'm kind of disappointed. I really wanted to see the House in the old Capitol. I thought that would have been kind of neat. So that's going on there. On the C-Spire text line, I know it's early, but do you think, this is from Nathan, a President Trump endorsement would automatically push someone to the front in Mississippi? I would say that certainly the president's endorsement carries a lot of weight. We've seen some situations where it certainly was a differentiator in some races in the country and in some where it wasn't. I think
it all comes down to how the polling looks.
Yeah.
I don't know that Trump has enough swing, even in the Magnolia State, to pull somebody from the back of the pack to the front of the pack.
Agree.
But if there are, say, 2-3 front runners that are really close, yeah, his nod would definitely be enough to push one out in front of a close 1 or 2.
I agree. My personal opinion is he won't. He won't endorse anybody in a primary. I think there are likely to be a number of strong Republican candidates that are Trump supporters. I just don't see him coming out and, interfering and inserting himself into that. And that's what you've seen in races across the country, where there is someone that clearly is, in his view, kind of behind another in a race. Usually it's a race where there's 2, right? But look at Texas. That's a situation. Senate, U.S. Senate race we're talking about. 2 Republican candidates, including the incumbent John Cornyn and the Attorney General Ken Paxton. It was thought and it was rumored that the president was going to endorse one of them and then request that the other exit the race. And the reason was not because he thought one was necessarily better than the other. It was because they wanted there not to be a runoff, which is, when is that scheduled? I thought it was this month. There's a runoff on the Republican side. On the Democrat side, there's not. James Tallarico is the nominee, and he's a strong candidate. And the president's, I think, position there is, I want to clear the field and get a candidate, not have a runoff, and let them immediately start focusing on running against Tallarico, the Democrat nominee, in the general coming up. The runoff, I thought, was this month for some reason. In Texas, but
I hadn't been keeping up with it that closely.
Yeah, but
the reason it's not that he was worried about them necessarily beating each other up in the runoff. It's just that they're spending money on the runoff that could be spent on the general.
Yeah, that right. That
was the motivation, was money.
Yeah, totally agree. But and to direct that money towards campaigning against the Democrat as opposed to the other Republican in the race. But the point is, ultimately, the president elected not to endorse, and so they just fought it out, and they're in a runoff now. So we'll see what happens on that. But looks like okay. So the USA Today I'm looking at has an article about that. And
yeah, the runoff's on May 26th.
Okay, I knew it was coming up this month, so a couple of weeks. But thus far, he really hasn't endorsed anybody. Just looking at the latest there, not endorsed either. But John Cornyn, the incumbent, is this just pandering or what, Rhino? It was announced yesterday. He, of course, a U.S. senator, and he's got some power here to rename a U.S. highway after the president. Oh, my gosh. Oh, geez. So crazy. I just find that almost comical. That I think is what people, once again, is one of those things people dislike about politics. Clearly that's pandering, that's placating, is all that is. I thought this was also an interesting piece as well, and it's up in New York. You know, the nutcase mom, Donnie, Noah Syndergaard, he's a ex-pitcher for the New York Mets. He's calling him a lunatic, and he's telling the members of his former team to distance themselves with, quote, socialist mayor. They think that that's what's causing their struggles on the diamond. And so Syndergaard says, you need to distance yourself from this guy. He is a nutcase, and that's why you guys can't play baseball. So remember the New York Post had the front page. They're so good at this. Not too long ago, where they are highlighting the Mets' troubles on the field. And the big headline was, Curse of the Mambino. And the Mets mascot, the guy with the big baseball head, you know, he's putting a hat on Mondami with that stupid smile. That's crazy. We're going to step aside for a break with the Village people bumping us out of this segment. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Sea Room, Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. We are in the Element Well studio. It's Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association, on MidDays. After the top of the hour break, this is on the C Spire text line. Have you heard about this, Rhino? North Panola High School was vandalized very badly by at least 18 individuals. The pictures look very bad. How the heck do 18 people get together and say, hey, let's go destroy the school, and everyone agrees? It's really sad. 18 people. What's going on there?
My first thought was a senior prank that got out of hand.
Yep.
Because I remember my senior year, we had a whole not the whole class, but a large chunk of the senior class show up on the campus with sidewalk chalk and wrote the class year and a whole bunch of other graffiti all over the place. And when we inevitably had our big parade to the school on the first day of school, as was part of our senior year traditions, we were all rounded up by the principal out in the little grassy area between the parking lots with a stern talking to about how some of the graffiti was offensive.
That's interesting.
But that was a senior prank, so I can imagine this was likely a senior prank that mob mentality took over, and everybody knows that the average IQ of a mob is half of its dumbest member.
I hadn't heard that, but no, I'm afraid you're right. I hate to hear that. Appreciate you sharing that, Nathan. Yeah, is this not another situation where obviously this starts at the house? And the fact that you got people at this age that think this is okay, I'm not saying it's perfect, but in general, I bet something's missing at home. That's just my thoughts on that.
On the C-Spire text line, Ricky in Aberdeen, some unknown seniors at Aberdeen High School stole all the bells around 1980. They were returned later.
I got you. Well, that's more of a prank, though, Ricky, than it is. You're not damaging or destroying. I got to tell you, back in my days in Oxford, in college, it was customary for some folks at Ole Miss to go over and locate the live Bulldog mascot. And it was kind of all prearranged, honestly, as part of the big Egg Bowl game, which used to be played in Jackson, Memorial Stadium. And they would trade, back and forth on stuff like that. But that's more of a prank. I mean, the dog was fine. It was safe. It was not going to be harmed. Whether or not you could pull that off today, probably not, honestly.
If we had fired off the fire extinguishers and tossed the principal's office, we likely would have gotten more than a stern talking to. But since we used sidewalk chalk that could wash off pretty easy, it was just a stern talking to.
But that's different than just destruction, intentional destruction. And the problem is, some people don't know where to draw the line, right? And they cross that line. No, this is a prank. No, that's destruction. That's the problem. Jerry from Tupelo said WTVA said this morning they were ex-students and most of them were 18 and over. Well, then they ought to either be in school or working. It just makes me mad, obviously. But I still believe if you took every one of those individuals...
It's also going to make it a lot easier to charge them.
That's just true. And you dug into their home life, I bet you'd find a problem. I really do believe that. But this all cost us money and of course, just the inconvenience and the harm and the cost associated with it. It's just bad. Hate to hear that. On the C-Spire text line, what does it say? When I graduated in 2018, the principal gave us a list of things they would approve of. We had to only use items listed on that list. Sure. I mean, part of your little, you can do this, but not do that. Okay, I get it. Just playing along with the prank.
That just feels so against the idea of a senior prank. Here's a list of approved ways you can prank us, guys.
That's true. It kind of takes the excitement out of it, right? Way back when I was in high school, says Joey the trucker, we were in the front doors of our school, but the next morning the principal had a bucket of hot water and soap, and we all had to clean it up. I love it. That's great. Well, when I was a freshman, now, when I went to high school at St. Joseph here in Jackson, it was 9 through 12. So you're a freshman in the 9th grade. That's changed somewhat, right? Most of the time, I think most middle schools are 7, 8, 9, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, 12.
In a lot of situations, yeah.
Yeah. So it was 9 through 12. And, of course, you were just sitting ducks for the seniors to abuse when you're in the 9th grade. So we had a kind of a area of the high school, big hallway, and on one side was the administrative office. It's the principal's office. On the other side was the cafeteria. But just beyond that, there was kind of a big sort of special classroom, and then across from that, adjacent to the cafeteria, if you could imagine, were bathrooms. And then double doors to go into the gym. That's kind of the way that wing of the high school was designed. And when I was in the 9th grade, the seniors liked to push the 9th graders into the girls' bathroom. When you were just walking by into the gym and you wouldn't know, unsuspecting, there'd be a couple of seniors behind you, and one of them would fling the door open, the other would push you in there. And so they get me one day, and standing out in the hall was our principal, Father Tarsi. I'll never forget. And guys, Father Tarsi, at the end of the day when you make the announcements, morning and end of the day, right? You got the speakers in every classroom. They're sitting with a mic. I think most people can identify. They sit with a mic there in the administrative office. And usually it's just like the administrator making the announcements. But this day, the day after, Tarsi gets on there. And whenever he got on there, he was mad about something. And I'm telling you, he could get on that mic. And actually, what I meant to say was he could say whatever he wanted to say without a mic, and you could hear it throughout the high school because he's yelling. And he gets on there, he says, if I see another boy in the girls' bathroom, they're going to pay the price for that. Isn't that right, Mr. Gibert? That's what he said. I'm like, I didn't walk in the girls' bathroom, but that's the only part he saw is me walking out. Because as soon as they pushed you, they'd haul butt into the gym. Oh, my gosh. Isn't that right? Yes, Father Darcy, I won't go in the girls' bathroom. Of course, today, if you did that, it'd be a problem. Today, we invite them in, right? Oh, my gosh. It would
depend on whether or not you were wearing a skirt as to whether or not you got in trouble or you got praised.
That just hit me. Think about how against the rules that was, and unthinkable and taboo and punishable. Now we invite them in. I'm laughing about it because it's insane. It's sick. It's crazy. And we're putting tampons and women's menstrual products in the boys' bathroom. Thus the moniker Tampon Tim, the governor of the Great Lakes state of Minnesota, because he signed off on such policies, right? Like in the 4th grade. Oh, my gosh. The world is truly upside down. After listening to your presentation at Rotary in Macomb, Mississippi yesterday, I'm convinced that Skynet will take control of the world eventually. So, Rhino, when I speak to civic groups, I like to dive into technology and the future and how it might impact life. And sure, I understand we've got to tread lightly, and there are concerns. Some of those are valid, some aren't. One thing I know is if we cede the high ground of technology, particularly quantum computing and artificial intelligence, to China, where the president happens to be today, and the president knows this very well. As I like to say in my speeches, we're all going to be wearing blue pajamas and doing the goose step to the Chinese flag. I mean, literally, that's what's at stake here. So I know there are lots of concerns about invasion of privacy with all this digital technology. But have you noticed, Rhino, that the people who complain the most about that blast their entire life on the internet? Like, where do you think that's going?
And the worst offenders use AI to generate images and memes to try to prove their point.
That's a good point. That's so true. We're going to take a little break right here in the Element Well studio. Once again, Gordon Fellows joins us at 11:05.
There's only 3 things that show: taxes, debt, and trouble. Oh, this I know, baby.
America's 250. Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
MidDays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
On the C Spire text line, my mom tells a story about Greenville High School once hanging the Greenwood High School, maybe the sign, what do they mean there? From, I think they left the word out, from the uprights way back in the day, definitely crossing a major line.
Maybe the mascot?
Mascot, yeah, possibly. Yeah, tell us what that is. That's on the 662. Appreciate that. Yeah, so, yeah, harmless pranks, right? And it seems like we don't think about harmless pranks anymore. It's why has it got to be destructive? It's ridiculous. What did Mo said? Yeah, they were adult former students. We had somebody else tell us that as well. Jerry from Tupelo said that was on the news. It's a shame because, like you said, as seniors, it's customary to have a little fun like that, and you should be able to do that without harming anything, stealing anything, damaging anything, hurting anybody. It's pretty simple. But we can't do that anymore. We had, when I was senior class president in my high school, customary to be involved in hanging the flag every day on the flagpole, which was out front of my high school. We all parked in the back. There was kind of a front. That was for the teachers and guests. They had a circular drive with the flag in the middle of it, and that was right by the main entrance to the school. And so the day that first day that the folks that come in and visit your school for accreditation, I don't remember the name of the organization, but they do this Southern School Accreditation or something like that. But they're the ones that come in, mark you up and say, yeah, okay, you're good to go. You're accredited. Well, that particular day, because it was out front, nobody could see the flagpole unless they drove to the front, right? Well, I had this idea. I got, as you can imagine, put up to it. Instead of hanging the flag that day with all these dignitaries from this accreditation group coming in, I hung Schlitz beer cans. I'm telling on myself here. And oh my gosh, the principal called me into the office, and let me tell you what he did. He wore me out, and then when I was leaving, he said, hey, Gerard, personally, I thought it was pretty funny. I don't like these people. You're not surprised at that, are you? Oh, my gosh. I said, okay, I'm not going to have him call my parents and tell them what a bad boy I was. I put the beer cans on the flagpole. Oh, my God. Harmless, though, right? Harmless. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the flag, Good grief. On the C Spire text line, is Tate delaying the redistricting to put himself in position to run for that seat? No, I don't think so whatsoever. I just think it's a controversial issue, and I think at the heart of that is the fact that we've had our primaries. And that would raise a stink. My guess is even if there's some provision in our law that kind of tacitly allows that, somebody's going to sue. And chaos would ensue. And this could be a situation that, I don't know, goes to our Supreme Court, and maybe they find some federal law being violated, like they always try to do, and take it to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Who knows? And that just ties the whole thing up and creates chaos. So I'm quite sure those are the discussions happening behind the scenes. And let's see, on the C Spire text line, since the Mississippi Supreme Court lines are good, will Tate finally name someone to fill the vacancies? It's been several months. It's a good question. I don't know. But since the court has said, nope, your districts are fine the way they are, that is in the governor's job jar right now. True, totally true. I'm afraid, this is Louis from the 662, I'm afraid that we have a growing population of people who have no interest in excelling in life. They are perfectly content with existing as long as they are taken care of by the government. So for them, their perfect representative is Benny Thompson. I actually agree with you, Louis. I think there are a lot of people, I like to say, they're satisfied with mediocrity. And that's a shame. And I would say, once again, Rhino, and folks may disagree with this, it starts in the home. Starts in the home. You're not being inspired by adults while you're growing up to do great things, mainly because they didn't, and nor did the generation before them. So we've seen this going on now for about, 50, 60 years? And it just propagates. It continues. But yet, are these not the same people certainly their representatives are, that complain about the people who do seek to excel because they got rich doing it, right? They get mad about that. And so, to that end, now you got what appears to be, have you seen this guy? Guys, a new 2028 poll shows that the front runners are Marco Rubio and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who now has legislation that is sponsored by a number of Democrats that would increase the minimum wage to $25. In other words, you're not going to produce any more for society. We're just going to pay you more and squeeze employers and make it almost impossible for them to operate their business, to even be a viable business. I know that's second-order thinking that they simply don't understand and don't want to. But it's politically popular, right? Unbelievable. The other thing is, as we've talked about before, 1.8% of the workers in this country earn the minimum wage. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of Middays. We're coming at you live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now Gordon Fellows. He's the president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. Hey, Gordon, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, thanks for having me. I got excited for a minute on your bump there when Rhino said Friday Eve. I thought he said Friday for a minute. I got really excited.
Gotcha. Well, we're anticipating it. Thus, the Friday Eve. Didn't get a chance.
Come fast enough.
Exactly. Didn't get a chance to chat with you last night at the Top 100 event. Great job by those folks. Man, it was packed at the Country Club of Jackson.
Yeah.
And ran into Eric, and I asked him, and he said that you had already departed, but there were so many people and just getting around. But nonetheless, I think when you look in that room, we'll just kind of wanted to share this with the folks. We're blessed with a lot of good talent in business, in government, in our media, in our policy advocates, our associations, such as your organization. A lot of really good people here, and I thought the governor did a fabulous job of highlighting, just to kind of maybe summarize what the governor said, because he went through a lot. Russ Latino, my friend, did a great job with his questions. They kind of had a one-on-one discussion for the audience there. But basically the message, Gordon, was we're punching above our weight here in Mississippi. And I totally agree with that. And then outside of Mississippi, we've been the butt of jokes for decades. It's been a source of frustration to me, as I know it has been to you and your members. We're pretty good here, despite what people outside of our state think. And I took great pleasure in traveling the country in sort of representing the technology industry. Like, yeah, we know what we're doing here. And they would say, yeah, it turns out you do. So the governor pointed out people are recognizing that, and that's why they're making investments here. And people, we're seeing maybe a bit of a turnaround, and this is a pretty good place to live. Does that mean we don't have work to do? No, and he said that. He acknowledged that. We always will. But I just wanted to kind of get that out there because you were there. Not sure if anybody at our audience was, but I thought the governor did a great job really highlighting the accomplishments, not only of him and his administration and his years in government, but he did a great job of attributing credit to so many others that have been involved, like in education. It's parents, it's students, it's teachers, it's administrators. all have played a role. All they did is put the policy in place, but the policies aren't good unless they are properly carried out and executed. And I'm sorry to take a little time there, but I know you were there. Did you feel the same way? Did you kind of get that feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, I did, and thank you for bringing that up. It was cool to be there. I had several members get recognized yesterday as influential leaders, and so it was fun to attend the event. I thought the governor did an excellent job. I agree with you. I really my ears perked up when he talked about how much capital investment has come into the state since his term or since he was elected 7 years ago. I would butcher the numbers,
85
but
billion.
it used to be a little bit, and now it went from like 8 billion the cycle before to 85 billion or something like that, right? So it was really impressive growth in capital investment, and I thought the points he raised yesterday about how we've progressed in so many metrics was really important, and I kind of think we take that for granted living here. I know everybody's kind of in the grind of going about their day to day. It was nice to sort of sit back and kind of think a little bit broader about all the positive things happening in the state last night.
I totally agree, and I think it's again to a great extent. It's a tribute, to all the extent. It's a tribute to the great people of the state of Mississippi, several of whom are represented in that room last night. He did a great job, I think, of praising those who have really made his administration successful. And Russ pointed out, I thought did a good job in pointing out that his wife Ely and his 3 daughters, they're very proud of him for what he achieved. And what he said, I think I get the numbers right here. He said he's been in office 7 years as a governor. He said the prior 7 years to him taking office, and this wasn't a slant on anybody, because you got to admit the foundation was built during that period between Governor Barber, Governor Bryant, and then now Governor Reeves. But he said in those 7-year period leading up to his first term election, $8 billion of investment in the state. In the 7 years since he's been governor, $85 billion. Again, the foundation was laid by those prior governors. He just simply took the ball and ran with it, and I think that was his message. We're all benefiting from that, and I hope Mississippi certainly understands that. And he pointed out the rest of the world does, and he said, hey, New York Times, our education accomplishments, they're not a miracle. It was just common sense policies like, hey, you know what? If you're a student in the 3rd grade and you're really not reading the 3rd grade level or doing math to 4th grade level, you need to stay back and get that right before we move you forward, because you're kind of losing that window. He did a great job of highlighting that. I digress a bit, but wanted to get you on to talk about the new Fed Chairman, Kevin Warsh. What do you members think about all this?
Yeah, well, the governor did do a great job, and I commend you for taking a minute to underline that. It's important for us all to remember, I think. With Mr. Warsh, it's always exciting when these things happen and you kind of get new blood moving around. He's got a great background, right? He's probably coming into this job very well prepared as a former Fed governor. A former economic advisor to presidents. He's been in the private sector. He's well respected, in all sorts of different veins of the financial industry. So, we're I think all very positive on him moving into the chairmanship. I believe Monday will be his first day as chairman. So,
right.
There was a little bit of a political holdup on whether or not he was going to get confirmed or not, and I'm kind of glad that seems to have settled itself, because it's important. I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy right now. There's been a lot of uncertainty for the last several years, and it's important that there be stability at the Fed to help sort of offset some of that uncertainty. So ultimately, high level, I think we're pleased with his background. He's got a lot of work in front of him. I commend anybody that has his background that could be doing a lot of different things to sort of raise their hand and say, I'll do this right now at this hard time. Good for him. I appreciate that, and we look forward to sort of seeing what his steps are going to be when he gets started.
Yeah. So I agree, and I appreciate that analysis. So what do you think about Jay Powell deciding just to hang around, stay on the board there? Highly unusual, irregular.
Yeah, it is unusual. There's lots of unusual things right now in the Fed world. So I think kind of first, I think of Jay Powell as a patriot, and I think his leadership over the last 6 years has been really important. If you go back to May 2020, 6 years ago, we were really concerned that a global health crisis was creating an unemployment crisis, and that unemployment crisis right now would be turning into a credit crisis that could lead to something worse than the Great Depression. Yeah. And that didn't happen, and he was one of the key 5 or 10 people that helped keep that from happening. So we could talk about decisions that were made and the speed of decisions, and we can Monday morning quarterback a lot of those. But sort of if you judge based on outcomes, we certainly avoided the worst case outcome back then. And he was an important part of that, and I think we all ought to respect him for that. The whole sort of question about him staying around is I think more of a political question than a process question, and I think he's got some political pressure on him that I think he wants to make sure is fully faded before he walks away. And I don't think I'm probably the right person to say that's the right thing or the wrong thing. It is different, but the level of political pressure that's on the Fed right now is a little bit different too. And so different political pressures sometimes lead to different outcomes. I think that's kind of what we're seeing.
Well, and that kind of leads me to the next question, Gordon, which is the president has made no bones about it. He thinks interest rates ought to be lower. And you've got Kevin Warsh coming into an economic environment where inflation is on the uptick, and now there's some discussion about possibly increasing interest rates. That's on the table. We got a break right now. If you can hang around with us, I hope you can. We can continue this discussion and get your thoughts on that, because that's quite the conundrum for a brand new Fed chairman there. We got Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association, on with us. Stay with us. We're in the Element Wealth studio.
Everybody ready? I'm ready. Ready here. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Money, as we're talking to Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. So before we went to break there, Gordon was just kind of teasing this idea that Kevin Warsh, I think the president supports him, but the president also has made it very clear he thinks Jay Powell was not a good, and I'm being nice in my description of him, not a very good Fed chairman, and always felt like interest rates could be lower, that he called him too late Jay Powell, that he always missed the mark. I got to tell you, I agree with the president somewhat, and I think that's because he kind of let politics get in the way and interfere with his role as the Fed chairman and having that influence over interest rates. And I think so desperately he and the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, and Biden's inner circle of economics people wanted so desperately to believe this inflation thing that bit us in 22 was so-called transitory, and therefore he reacted slow to adjusting interest rates to address that. And we're sort of paying the price for that now. The president wants those to go down, but man, how do you do that when we just got a CPI report that came in hotter than expected, and then the PPI report yesterday that wasn't favorable to cutting interest rates as well? He's in quite the pickle. Yeah,
it's going to be a hard time for the Fed. I think I tell you, I'll say this about Jay Powell's tenure too before I get into the interest rate question. Yeah. One thing that I think gets overlooked is you remember when President Biden was elected, Jay Powell was serving as chair, and there was some question about whether or not Mr. Powell was going to stay on as chair, and some question about whether the White House wanted to appoint someone different. And you may remember there was also a legitimate communist nominated to be the comptroller of the currency, and there was some I guess speculation amongst some of us that the president wasn't going to make a decision on whether or not he was going to keep Powell until he could see how far he could push the bank regulators. And Mr. Powell maybe felt like his hands were tied on making some decisions until he knew if the president was going to keep him in office or not. Okay. So I actually kind of put some blame on Biden personally. That's just my personal opinion. I got nothing to back that up with. Just an observation. I think to your question about Mr. Warsh and the decision they're going to have to make. So we had our annual convention last week. One of the members of the Federal Open Markets Committee, Alberto Musalem, who's the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, came and spoke, and his remarks are available online on the Federal Reserve Bank's St. Louis's website. But we asked him, what do you think about monetary policy? How are you thinking about the future around cuts or around stability or around increases? And he sort of said, there's a realistic path where we could cut. There's a realistic path where we may stay flat. There's a realistic path where we can increase, and we're going to have to see what the data says. And that's I think a very contextualized way of saying there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think anybody that sort of tells you they know what the Fed's going to do over the next 6 months, the next 12 months, is got a better crystal ball than me. I think they're going to have to really parse out: are we really at full employment? It feels like we might be, but there may be some pockets of underemployed people out there that they've got to think about. Certainly, there's inflationary pressure on the other end of their mandate. And right, the Fed has a dual mandate of maximum employment and inflation at 2%. We're certainly above that 2% target. And are we fully employed, right? And then, there's also some headwinds around what is AI going to do to that employment picture? And what are some other shifts around employment going to look like in the next few years? So they've got hard decisions to make. I think it's really, really hard to know. Certainly there's going to be, political pressure from the White House for cuts. I think it's really hard to do that in a time when there's so much uncertainty around inflation because of the Straits of Hormuz and the war in Iran.
Well, that's a good point. That's where I was going to go. Is now you've got folks in the financial industry even weighing in on this constrained oil issue. This past Monday, Morgan Stanley came out and made a statement, said that oil markets are, and I'm going to quote here, in a race against time. He says that this will start to have a very negative impact on the global economy as well, of course, as well as the domestic economy, if the Strait stays closed through June. Is kind of the time frame that they're tagging here. So, yeah, the bottom line is we need energy to power the economy, and that affects all industries, and it certainly affects the banking industry. You need folks that need loans. And that means that they're growing their businesses and they're expanding or they're starting up or whatever the case may be. And they might be willing to or thinking about sort of staying put where they are given the uncertainty of the future of energy.
Yeah. And we saw that, that sort of economic slowdown. I don't want to say slowdown, but there was a pause in lending activity around Mississippi late in the Biden administration in large part because gas prices had gotten so high. Yeah. The cost of transportation of goods had gotten really. So most businesses sort of had to say, well, now's not the time for me to invest in this new thing. I need to just cut costs where I can and absorb this high price environment. And so if we get stuck in that kind of situation again, because of geopolitical issues, then that I think will make it hard for the Fed board to cut. But if if the job market sort of continues to look pretty good, then maybe there's a path for them. It just kind of depends on how quick I think we get stability around Iran.
So, Gordon, how's loan flow for your members right now?
I think everybody I talk to says it's pretty good.
Okay.
Commercial jobs are solid. We're kind of getting into mortgage season right now. The summers are oftentimes after school years when people move, right? So, all that seems to be pretty positive. We're lucky as a state, and we were talking about this earlier with the governor's comments about how positive everything is right now. I think there's momentum in our economy as a state. Also, we're not one of those states that goes up and down a whole lot.
That's right.
We're pretty steady, right? And so, we don't have, for instance, a lot of exposure to commercial real estate. And, I've talked about before, that other, big urban states have, and that's been a drag, right? So we're not looking at some of those kind of sector drags that others have. But, one of the big questions I have about this week too is how does the president handle the situation in China as it relates to agriculture, consumption of U.S. grown crops? So that's I think an important question for our state. There are some questions like that, particularly around the ag sector that we need good answers on, I think. But in general, I think loan pipelines are pretty strong. Most people see good growth right now.
Well, that's good. And with respect to the mortgage lending side of the business, mortgage rates a little elevated, certainly to where they were 4 or 5 years ago, and depressed a lot during the COVID era. But there's some reports that show that the inventory is starting to stabilize, right? That we're kind of getting the equilibrium of supply and demand. That should at least keep the price of housing from continuing to rise, maybe even fall, depending on the market, of course. So that offsets the higher mortgage rates.
Yeah, and I, kind of anecdotally, when I kind of ride around, you see houses getting built, right? You know, so I mean, I think that's, you're seeing new inventory coming online. I think that's a positive too. So we'll see if the rates, we'll see how the market reacts to sort of the summer buying season. If activity can kind of drive rates down a little bit, we'll see.
You make a great point too, and it's something I got to tell you. I used to make back in my business days when I was soliciting capital and pitching for capital, which is, we live in a state that it doesn't get really super hot, but it doesn't get cold. It's fairly level. And I think I've always thought that's because we don't have any single industry, or we don't have any single or big concentration of employers where if there's a downturn, so many people lose their jobs. That has such a negative impact on the economy. I think about the automobile industry, for example, in Michigan, where there was such a reliance on that and a concentration. And, one little downturn, boom, the next thing you know, 20,000 people are losing their jobs today. That would just devastate a community. We don't really have that in Mississippi. It's kind of a good and a bad thing, I guess you would say. We're fairly even keel in that respect. We got a break. If you can hang, we can keep talking. I'd love to. You good, or you got to go?
Yeah, I could probably do one more.
Okay, stay on. It's Gordon Fellows, president of Mississippi Bankers Association. Coming right back.
From this.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Gordon Fellows. He's president of the Mississippi Bankers Association. So, Gordon, I think what I'm hearing you say, your members report strong lending activity and deal flow despite interest rates being a tad elevated. But as we said earlier, you got the summer mortgage season coming up, and so that will be, I think, a test. Rates are down from last year. This time last year, certainly mortgage rates are.
Right.
But there's speculation now that there may be an increase, an uptick in the benchmark rate just to try to get control of this inflation. And I think that's just all dependent on how long it takes for energy to get back to a price that doesn't drive inflation. And there are all kinds of estimates of that. I don't think anybody knows. So are your members, are they looking at that sort of stuff, Gordon? Are they looking at the price of energy and sort of
Sure.
Designing their strategy around that?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a factor, and it's certainly something they're talking to their customers about too, right? Because that sort of increased energy cost impacts different businesses in different ways, right? So it's something we're all trying to pay attention to, and like I've said, there's a lot of uncertainty about it, and it's hard to know where that's going to end or how it's going to shake out. So I'm hopeful we get some stability around it pretty soon, and certainly feels like the stock market is beginning to think that's coming, so. Maybe that's good. Maybe it is settling down. I was going to say too, one of the things that I like to kind of watch as an indicator for how competitive the loan market is, right? If you think about the bank lending system, banks have to have deposits to make loans, right? And so how competitive is the deposit environment? How frequently are you seeing advertisements for different deposit products at banks? That's popping up a lot in my feeds right now, right? So, and I'm seeing that on television, and usually that's a sign to me when there's a strong competitive environment, a strong advertising environment for deposit products at different banks. That means they're looking to grow their deposits so they can grow their lending. And while we were off air, I was kind of looking back over some data from the last several years. You kind of look, there's been significant deposit growth in Mississippi for the last 3 years, and the loan growth has mirrored the deposit growth almost exactly.
Sure.
Right. So I think that's important to think about, and I kind of bring that up to say there's some important legislation getting considered in Congress today, in the Senate Banking Committee related to stablecoins. We have real strong concerns around that. Some of the language in that legislation that would perhaps incentivize individuals to move funds out of the banking system, take deposits away from banks, and put it in stablecoins. Those stablecoins, because they're backed by U.S. Treasuries, are really a new way to finance federal debt, right? And if I'm deeply concerned that if we start to see deposit flight out of the banking system, particularly in rural places, rural banks in Mississippi, into federal debt servicing, right, then if deposits go down, then lending capability goes down. And so if money moves out of a rural small town bank into Silicon Valley, based stablecoin product, that means there's going to be less small business lending and less mortgage lending in that rural community where the money leaves. And so it's a really important question to the future, I think, of what the financial system is going to look like. It's kind of getting partially answered right now as we're talking. They're doing the markup in DC. So there's a lot of innovation also. And my point in bringing that up is say there's a lot of things changing as new technologies emerge around the banking sector, and that's also one of these really important sort of long-term strategies. We got to get the energy thing right. How are we helping our customers work through that? Also, at the same time, how's each bank thinking about implementing new technologies as customer expectations change as these technologies emerge? There's a lot changing and a lot of fluidity in the industry right now.
It certainly is. And related to that, you've probably seen this, Coinbase is kind of transitioning to an everything exchange where you could buy and sell ETFs and stocks and bonds and crypto and even including prediction market trading in there. Is this
Right.
maybe the future of trading, do you think? Do you think perhaps all the sort of household name of typical brokers and wealth management companies, Schwab and the like, might convert to being an everything exchange?
It could be, right, and that has pluses and minuses, right, and if one of those sort of maybe unintended, maybe intended consequences is movement of bank deposits, traditional consumer bank deposits, into these online technology-based platforms, then who's going to fund the loans in the markets that the deposits are moving out of?
Good point.
And so there's I think a really important sort of downstream effect of what does economic growth look like in rural places if what has traditionally been community bank money begins to leave the community it's in.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we're all going to have to think about. Our country has traditionally it's unique to America, the community banking system, right? If you go to Canada, there are like 6 banks in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. We have 58 in Mississippi. There are 4,000 in America. That's down, maybe 3,000 since Dodd-Frank passed. So there used to be every community used to have its own bank. And that model is under a lot of regulatory pressure. It's now under a lot of market and technology pressure. And I think that's something we need to be very intentional about as a country, right? Do we want to walk away from a model that has allowed local people to make local decisions around how we allocate capital in our community? And if we're not careful, we could look back in 5 or 10 years and that model could be greatly degraded based on some decisions that get made in the next year or two.
That's a great point.
So it's a really important time.
It's super critical, is it not, Gordon, to a state like Mississippi where we don't have big concentrated population centers, where the reason we have community banks is because they serve a sort of larger geographic areas to have enough customer base, but they're very important because they're a good drive away from a population center.
Yeah, that's right. And they're nobody knows its community like local people, right? So if the credit allocation decision for something that's happening in Jackson has to be made in Nashville or Atlanta or North Carolina, then they're just not going to know the community the same way. And 100%. That gets even more complicated if it's a decision in Mendenhall, right, or a decision in Chula, right? And that if that has to be made in Atlanta, North Carolina, then that's a very different world than what we're used to.
That's a great point.
And I think that local tie-in to the economy locally by local bankers using local funds is always been an underappreciated aspect of the American economy. And I think we've got to be very careful that we don't accidentally wash that away.
You're so right. And banking, I think it's fair to say, and I'm talking about both commercial and consumer banking, it's all based on relationships. I think the honest truth is that the banks really, because they're subject to such draconian regulations, they can't really do a lot different than another bank can do. It's all about the relationship and building those relationships in the interpersonal interactions between the customer and the banker.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's been a like I said, I don't think I fully appreciated how important that dynamic has been until I moved into this position. It's something that has really been an underappreciated piece of our economy for centuries. Really since the 1890s. And if we're not careful as new technologies emerge, we could be looking at some pretty significant shifts in that local credit decision making. And I think that's really, really dangerous. We got to be very careful about it.
And I know you're following this. Even Jamie Dimon at J.P. Morgan, if not the largest, the second largest bank in the country. I know them and Bank of America kind of go back and forth on that. Even they have recognized that, and they've completely re-engineered their retail banking.
Right. Yeah, I think he's got a goal of having a branch within a certain amount of mileage of every American by a certain year, and I don't know the specifics of it, but if you kind of go back to pre-2022, they weren't really in Mississippi.
That's right.
Now they've got some branches in Jackson. They've grown into the state. They've become a good corporate partner for folks. I noticed they were sponsoring a local thing the other day here in Jackson. And they've got, I think, plans to continue to grow more branches in states like this that are new to them. So, then that's also another thing to watch, right, is how many bank branches are there actually open in the state. And for a long time, there's been this decline. In the last year, I've seen a little, very minuscule, like maybe 5 banks, but it's turned and the decline has gone to a very small increase. And I think that's a positive sign, too.
Yeah, I agree. Gordon Fellows, president of the Mississippi Bankers Association, has been our guest. Appreciate you coming on, Gordon. Thanks for staying with us today. Really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Gerard. Good to see you.
You too. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us.
Up.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I've been driving all night, my hands wet on the wheel. There's a voice in my head that drives my heel. It's my baby calling, says I need you here. And it's 4:30 and I'm shifting gear.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. The White House is thinking about 250 pardons to mark America's 250th birthday. They're weighing a plan for the president to issue these pardons as a way to mark the celebration of our 250th year as a nation. Just preliminary discussions right now. Some have raised concerns, some are in the inner circle in the White House about doing too many more pardons or really any at all as we approach the midterm elections. The president, of course, wants to put his mark on the national celebration known as the semi-quincentennial. Push for a National Guard of American heroes featuring 250 life-size statues of figures including past presidents George Washington and Ronald Reagan and baseball pioneer Jackie Robinson. That's what the president wants, a National Garden of American Heroes. He has also initiated plans for the Patriot Games. Those would be athletic competitions among high schoolers. And he's commissioned the repainting of the reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial. Boy, that's gotten a lot of attention because apparently it's being reported that he bypassed the competitive bid process and awarded that to somebody he trusts to actually complete that project. That's what they're saying. So I don't know about the pardons, where that's going to go, but apparently that is on the table for the midterms. And I found this really fascinating. Sebastian Gorka. Remember him? Served in the president. He's a White House official now, but he served, of course, in the first Trump administration as well. I don't remember his exact position. National Security Advisor, maybe, or something like that. But he is he's led the current presidential terms counterterrorism strategy. And he has shared that on Pod Force One, it's where he talks, that Trump left Vance succession, J.D. Vance, our vice president, succession instructions should he be assassinated. This is what Gorka is reporting. That is interesting. He says, quote, "There's a letter in the drawer in the Resolute desk that is addressed to the vice president should something happen to him." Man, I certainly understand how the president would be thinking about that, as it seems like on a regular basis, some wacko out there seeks to take him out. we don't even talk about that anymore. It wasn't too long ago, the White House Correspondents' Dinner there at the Hilton, such action did occur. Some nutcase comes in. I sure hope we get to the bottom of what appeared to me to be less than adequate security, where you could get all the way into the foyer just outside the doors before you go through a magnetometer. That doesn't make any sense. That's less security than was at the inauguration. Far less. So, interesting that the president on Miranda Devine's Podforce One podcast, she, of course, a New York Post journalist, reported that, and that came from Sebastian Gorka. It's really interesting. Didn't expect to see or hear that, but I get it. I hate that is the case.
Yeah, there was
honestly.
scuttlebutt a couple months ago about something like that, where the scuttlebutt at the time was he left instructions to basically nuke any country that sent assassins to assassinate him.
How about that? I didn't really know that.
And now North Korea has done the same thing. I don't remember if they made it a law or put it in their constitution or if it was just a decree from the premier, the leader, great leader, that if anything should happen to him in an assassination, that they would just nuke everybody.
Man, very interesting. Well, that's really something that the president felt compelled to write a letter to his vice president detailing a proposed succession plan should something happen to him. Terrible that is even the case in this country. This redistricting discussion, by the way, as we were talking earlier, not only has it hit the national news, but the state of Mississippi has been foisted into national news as well. And the governor, his photo and his comments featured in numerous national publications. I'm looking at one in the Washington Times right now. Coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of MidDays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
I'm going to be up at Itawamba Community College tomorrow in Fulton, Mississippi for the 2026 spring graduation. You will hear all about the great things going on at ICC. That's MidDays live at Itawamba Community College tomorrow, Friday, May the 15th. Looking forward to that. Beautiful campus up there as well. If you guys have not traveled to the northeastern portion of our state, just gorgeous landscape. We're so blessed in Mississippi, the diverse landscape we have. Think about the coast, where I was yesterday in southwest Mississippi, and then all the way up there to the Delta at the Delta Council last week. Completely different, but such an attractive landscape with the greenery and the wide open spaces, just beautiful. And then you go up to Itawamba, get a little rolling hills, get the Tom Bigby and the waterway, and just beautiful up there. Beautiful setting. I remember my son going up there for a baseball camp, and the baseball field is right there on the waterway. Tall pines that kind of separate the outfield fence from the waterway there. Just a gorgeous setting. So that's where I'll be tomorrow. Hope you'll tune in for that. The president, Dr. Jay Allen, I'm sure will join us, as well. I haven't seen the lineup yet, as well as a graduate or two. Always fun, and it's so rewarding to be there and be in the midst of that and see all those families celebrating graduation of their student. It's a big deal. So it's that time of year. as you know. Now, some folks aren't really happy about the commencement speakers. Tell the folks about one of those.
Yeah, up at NYU, there are a gaggle of students that are upset that they've decided to have one of their professors speak at the commencement. One, Jonathan Haidt. He is a psychologist and a best-selling author. They've come out and said that he's not a good fit, that he talks down to us, he doesn't understand us. He's got the latest book he came out with was, where'd it go? The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And he calls the younger generations coddled and anxious. But it's not just his beliefs that have some speaking out against him being the commencement speaker. There's at least one student who was talked to, a marketing major, that said they were frustrated by the professor's lack of celebrity status compared to past NYU commencement speakers like Molly Shannon last year, or Pharrell Williams in 2017, or Taylor Swift in 2022.
Oh, gosh.
Quote, "You pay all this money, you spend all this time and energy looking forward to that big day of having a fun commencement speaker," end quote. Said the marketing major, who was jealous of Northeastern's pick, Hillary Duff. But continued, said, "All my friends had to physically Google who the commencement speaker was because we didn't know."
So what you're saying is entitlement-itis has infected graduates to the point that they're entitled to a particular status level of a commencement speaker, right? That's where we are.
And NYU has pretty much told them to sit down and shut up.
Good for them.
Quote, "He teaches one of the most popular classes at NYU, and his latest book has been on the Times bestseller list for 100 weeks running. We're excited he'll be on our stage to share something truly meaningful with this year's graduates."
I got to tell you, how many kids when they're in college think about the commencement speaker? One of the comments you made, you pay all this money, you look forward to an entertaining commencement speaker or something, whatever adjective. No, you don't. Nobody thinks about the commencement speaker. What you should be thinking about is getting your degree and getting the hell out of there and going to work. Now, I understand sometimes you may be getting a degree and you plan to go for another degree and advance and move up through the ranks of terminal degrees. Sure. But for the most part, it's time to go to work. Quit being a lazy bum. You're not entitled to a commencement speaker. That's outrageous. Meanwhile, at the University of Central Florida, Gloria Caulfield was the commencement speaker for the Central Florida's College of Arts and Humanities and Nicholson School of Communication at Media. This was at a ceremony on May 8th, not too long ago. She, Miss Caulfield, is a real estate executive. Whoa, boy, did she ever strike a chord when she said, quote, "The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution." And the crowd booed. She said, "What happened?" She looked over her shoulder as if searching for an escape hatch. "Okay, I struck a chord. May I finish? Only a few years ago, AI was not a factor in our lives." And the crowd erupted in cheers. And now AI capabilities are in the palm of our hands. And then they booed. Sorry. Go do something else that's needed. I mean, would this be the case if there was such a thing as a college and education, a degree, what have you, in, I don't know, operating livery staples, and Henry Ford shows up and says, "Hey, I got this new thing, the horseless carriage." Would they boo him? Is that kind of the same here? Oh, my gosh. Oh, I don't understand why people are so opposed to progress, to innovation. And someone on our C Spire text line, I don't know who this person is. That's fine. They don't have to identify themselves. Didn't really like the comment I made about the folks that have achieved economic success in this country have done so because they have created enormous societal value. They've produced a lot, and that seems to be overlooked by the likes of an AOC who says there's no way you can earn enough money to become a billionaire. Not $1 billion, but to have a balance sheet that makes you a billionaire. That's what she said. She actually said that the American Revolution was based on an uprising against billionaires, or the billionaires of the day. Well, she's totally wrong. And again, if you were to put that as an answer to a question on a 9th grade history test, what was the cause of the American Revolution? And you said, oh, it was to overthrow the billionaires of the time, that would be categorically false. Pretty sure that doesn't exist in any history books, but because it's not true is why. Now, they may try to rewrite history. They're known for that, as you know, to suit their political agenda. She's wrong in this idea. So tell us, AOC, how much can a person reasonably, in your view, achieve in terms of net worth? You're basically saying $1 billion's too much. What is it? You know they'll never answer that. It's kind of like the question is when they talk, the answer, I should say, to the question, well, when you say the rich don't pay their fair share, well, how much should they pay? They never answer that question. I've never heard it put in any kind of specific mathematical terms, right? They won't do that because it's just a political talking point that seems to gin up the same people that complain about not having a celebrity speaker. Honestly, it's that same ilk, same demographic. And it's kind of sad to see that she's now elevating to perhaps being the top on the Democrat ticket.
Depends on which poll you look at.
It depends on the poll. You're right. I agree.
Because there was a poll that was released yesterday that had Kamala for the first time in a while beating out AOC.
Okay. Got you. Well, and there are a number of others that have indicated, at least, expressed an interest in running as a Democrat. But your
Kamala AOC ticket would be interesting.
Give us a whole lot to talk about. Yeah, I got a text here from Senator Josh Harkins. I don't think he minds me attributing this to them. He's listening. He said, yeah, these people that achieve this financial status, they also took enormous risk. In many cases, risked everything they own, which wasn't very much, but often left cushy, good-paying jobs to go do this. That second-order thinking never enters their mind, does it? Doesn't cross their mind. They don't get that. The fundamental model of capitalism is risk-reward. And guess what? Sometimes it produces winners, sometimes it produces losers. But overall, it's way better than any other system because you know what they produce? Across the board, losers. It's equal misery. That's what other systems produce that the likes of AOC support. You're totally right, Senator Harkins. Appreciate you sending that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
For a flipping good time.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income growth and guarantees. You like your money situation on Wall Street today. The indexes are in the green, setting records. The Dow eclipsed the 50,000 mark, despite the fact that crude oil is actually up So I think the positive earnings report, Cisco reported earnings yesterday after the bell and had a blowout quarter. They have been promoting, as we talked about earlier, their new product line of artificial intelligence powered switching infrastructure. Rhino, folks used to ask me what we did as a technology company, and typically people think when they think about technology, they think about what they use, what they interface with, which is software, right? And so the traditional question would be, you guys write software, you develop programs, and we'll always have to explain, no, we actually design and install the systems that host and power all that software, right? All the underlying infrastructure. I used to describe it as the high-tech plumbing business. So instead of moving water, we're moving data. But it's similar in that it's just kind of a bunch of tinker toys, the way I used to put it, that are all designed to work together to move your data around. And that's what Cisco does. And you got to go back to, I believe it was in the 70s, late 70s, when the two scientists at Stanford, they invented, to this person earlier that said, all they did was get rich. They used their God-given brain, it's what they did, to invent what's called the Internetworking Operating System, iOS. That's really the magic behind the Internet that allows data to be moved around efficiently. You're probably familiar with the devices known as routers. Those routers are just computers that have routing software installed on them, and those devices are purpose-built to route data. But it's Cisco's invention, the founders of Cisco, their invention of iOS. It's what made all that possible. And when the Internet was being built out in the 90s, at the heart of that was all of this Cisco infrastructure. There was commercial-grade infrastructure, optical, as we used to call it, because it was optical switches that were used by carriers to create the backbone that is the modern Internet today. And then we consumers, businesses, we all connect via routers to the Internet. And by the way, your phones, which are connected to wireless access, big old wireless access points, those are just those towers that are dot the landscape. In the bottom of those towers, you'll see concrete buildings with no windows on them and maybe one door. Inside that is a bunch of that sort of equipment that routes all that data around and gets it plugged in, if you will, interfaces with the telecommunications network. Kind of digressing a bit, but just so happy to see my former partner, business partner. We were a partner. That's what they called us. We represented Cisco. Having such a blowout quarter, but it's because, just like you've seen across almost every industry, they've incorporated AI into their core business, which is switching and routing. That just makes it way more efficient. It also significantly enhances the cybersecurity technology that the company makes. Because guess what? The bad guys are using AI to penetrate, and the only way you can fend it off and thwart it and protect against it is with AI-powered cyber protection technology. That's what these guys make. So good to see that, and also many of my old friends from those days that work for partners of Cisco and also work at Cisco. Fantastic, great company, great leadership. Chuck Robbins, the current CEO, John Chambers, the longtime first CEO from West Virginia, by the way. Rhino, that's pretty cool to think about a West Virginian that was at the helm and often thought to be the best CEO in Silicon Valley during his day. The president, as you know, is over in China, and he's meeting with them today. It's been interesting. Just the reports coming out of China. There's an entourage of reporters. And the objectives, as published by the White House, to expand access for U.S. businesses in China, pushing for more action on fentanyl, The also talks are including the president's discussion with President Xi on purchases of U.S. farm products. That's a big thing to Mississippi. I think last time we talked to our friend Ten Kendall with Gaddis Farms here in central Mississippi, I believe he told us, Rhino, that China was not honoring their part of the agreement, which is not surprising. They're known for that. That's the communist way, is it not? Just say whatever you want to, but then just act differently.
Kind of a double whammy because communists tend to be duplicitous in business, and it's kind of Chinese custom to try to get one over. Because if you can, as a Chinese national, get one by somebody, that's not a moral slight on you in their mind. It's a failing on the person's part that got.
Interesting. So President Xi has showed an interest in buying more U.S. oil. That's been a problem in that most of their oil comes from Iran, and they bypass the oil commodities market. It subverts that, if you will, but as you know, the strait's closed down. That's been a problem, and it's causing a problem in China economically as well. Both have agreed, according to the White House, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They don't seem to be too anxious to help us out with that situation. And no mention of China pressuring Iran to end the conflict as well. But what is news as of today, this just really released, is that he has warned, President Xi of China, that differences over to Taiwan could lead to a conflict. They're not willing to give up that belief that they rightfully own Taiwan and should have possession as part of the nation of China of that island country. That's a problem for this country because much of the semiconductors, especially those special purpose advanced semiconductors, chips, that we use for so many applications in this country, come from Taiwan, kind of the semiconductor capital of the world. The president has been encouraging reshoring of that. Even Biden, I disagreed with this, honestly, but the CHIPS Act was a bunch of subsidies for companies, direct corporate subsidies, corporate welfare, to expand semiconductor manufacturing in this country. I didn't think that was a good bill. It also has been largely a failure because, as you recall, it included all kinds of nutcase social justice DEI requirements to qualify for those loans, because that, of course, is the Democrat way. Always have to mix, if you will, their social justice activism with business, which the two, in my view, should not even cross paths. So, but it got a little, not testy, but it's thorny. Let's put it that way, because the president knows how critical Taiwan is to this country and the world, and he doesn't want China invading it. That would be a problem that would, I think, necessitate some action on our part. Question is, what sort of action? Military action? Going to war with China? That's a different story than going to war with Iran, of course. So they met a couple of hours today behind closed doors at the Great Hall of the People. Also had quite the welcoming ceremony as the two leaders headed into the hall with a Chinese band playing the Star-Spangled Banner. How about that? According to a post by their foreign ministry spokesperson, Mao Ning, Xi told Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue. You see where their heads are in China-U.S. relations. That's a concern. Interesting. The president did get what could be described as a bit of an upgrade on the welcoming ceremony. It's interesting how the Chinese do that, Asians in general. Coming right back. Stay with us.
From the sea.
Come on.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. The market's comfortably in the green. That continues. Earnings, the story there, and investors seem to be shrugging off the price of oil and inflation and consumer. Retail spending actually came in line this morning. New jobs, jobless numbers, as they call it, new jobless claims and continuing claims also in line. It's kind of amazing. And you just wonder, is there another shoe waiting to fall from this rather precipitous rise in the price of oil that's affecting everything and is about to, I think, become a major factor in inflation in other goods and services because energy is a core component of those costs. So that remains to be seen, but it's certainly somewhat of a risk to the economy with respect to inflation, to the point that now some are suggesting that we may see an interest rate increase. Boy, that would be terrible. Hope that's not the case. So let's hope that there's some resolution to this situation in Iran sooner rather than later, because that's kind of gumming up the works. Now, one of the things that the president we talked about is encouraging China to buy more oil, but we should point out we're not producing more oil. We're just going to sell more to them, and of course we import what we are unable to produce domestically. One thing we do produce way more of than we use is gas. And the good news there is as you guys know, with all the data centers being built and the increase in the demand for electricity, utility electricity providers are busy building out new generation and transmission capability to meet those needs. And one of the key, of course, fuel resources used in the generation of electricity is natural gas. That turns out to be something that we have plenty of, way more than we consume. We're blessed with that, including right here in Mississippi. Oil's a little different. It's under the ground, but we really don't have a way to get it out, and we certainly don't have a way to refine it. Our refining capacity is not nearly sufficient to cover our daily consumption. So we do export, but mostly what we export is oil we can't refine here. And that's a chemistry problem. Our refineries are built around refining the high sulfur content oil, so-called dirty oil, but much of the new extraction is the light sweet variety that we have to send abroad for refining. So there's a bit of a misalignment with respect to what we produce, what we refine, and all that is kind of contributing to this dynamic where right now we're certainly exporting. And the president announced that he wants to release more oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve currently holds about 400 million gallons. It has a capacity of just north of 700 million. And that reserve itself mainly or or is, not mainly, but it is a bunch of salt domes under the ground in Louisiana and Texas. And oil gets stored in those salt domes. Now, I remember a while back, Rhino, you and I looked up why salt domes? Why are they a good suitor for storing oil? You remember it had something to do with the fact that the salt won't leach into the oil, but does keep it from leaching out, right, and leaking out. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And so,
yeah, the salt's pretty much impermeable, and it's usually found in geologically stable areas.
Yeah, that's right. So low risk of earthquakes and so forth, which would be a problem for underground stuff. So
because salt it has similar properties to the mythical Roman concrete, the self-healing concrete, because if you get a crack in salt, then water runs through the crack, forms new salt crystals, and the crack seals itself.
Okay, gotcha. Well, so someone along the line figured out that feature of salt and underground salt domes, and they're cavernous in that respect. So we just pump the oil in there, and that's where we store it, 700 million gallons. So 43 million, I think, is what has been proposed to be released to try to help out, if I'm not mistaken. But
think about it this way. You see in movies, like fantasy movies, where there are these large underground open areas where it's like a cathedral underground. And that's just not usually physically possible underground, except in salt mines. Like you look at some of the salt mines over in Europe where they're tourist attractions. They're no longer used as mines because they're just these big open spaces underground that are awe-inspiring because they're that big. But you only see that kind of stability in a mine or an underground operation when you're working with salt.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. But, I mean, I've always known about using salt domes and that being essentially what comprises the Strategic Petroleum Reserve as a way to store this reserve oil. I just wasn't aware what the redeeming feature of salt and salt domes was that makes it suitable for that purpose.
That's why so much of the large-scale mining nowadays is open mining or pit mining, because it's frankly just easier to take the topsoil off of what you're trying to get to mine than to send people into little 4-foot by 4-foot shafts.
Okay.
Because it's incredibly difficult to keep the earth from crumbling and crushing you when you're digging underneath it.
Makes sense. So it's 53 million, I said 43, 53 million gallons of the 400 and change that are sitting in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that the White House is proposing to loan to the oil and gas companies, because what's going on here is that they're selling more. He's encouraging them to sell more to China and others to show the world that America can deal with this loss of the oil that flows through the strait. America can help address that for the world, I should say. But we consume about 19 million gallons a day. So barrels a day. Barrels a day, not gallons. Thinking about water. And so that's a couple of days worth, maybe just under 3 days worth. So not for a long period of time would that hold us over. And I'm not even sure that would cause the price to go down, the same as the suggestion to pause the fuel tax, the federal fuel tax. I'm not convinced that would cause the price to go down either. But it's certainly on the table. And it's just a way that the administration is looking to kind of mitigate this problem of the price spiking during this conflict situation in Iran. So, but speaking of water, I wanted to get there because that's something that you hear by the anti-data center folks. Oh my gosh, they're consuming all the water. We're not going to have any water to drink. They're completely wrong. first, data centers consume about 0.3% of the water in this country. It's that we use about 82 trillion gallons of water, trillion, a year in this country. And it turns out that what data centers use is a fraction of that. Now, does it make sense to put a data center in an arid area that's already experiencing a drought and has limited access to water, like the southwest part of the country? No, it doesn't. But an area like Mississippi, where we have more water than we can consume, heck, why don't we use the water that's flooding the Delta to cool the data centers? But I think what people are not aware of is just how much water gets wasted in this country by ancient water infrastructure. I mean, 60s and 70s is when most of the water infrastructure was built, particularly in the cities in this country. So get this, Rhino, this is just hot off the press. Austin, Texas, says that smart meters have saved them billions of gallons of water. So the city of Austin is upgrading their meter technology using smart meters, and that's what they claim, is that they have saved billions of gallons of water that they were otherwise losing with the old meters. Coming right back, final segment.
Hello, I'm
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
So we ran out of time in the last segment, so I didn't really get to explain how smart meters can help save water. And it's real simple. It's because you think about what happens now if you have a leak. May not get detected for quite some time. Bunch of water has already been wasted.
Even in a good water system, it's going to be a note you get on your door or in the mail the next day.
Correct.
After it's been running for 24 hours and sent up a red flag.
Exactly right. And then there are, as you know, there are underground leaks, right, that are just in the main lines that don't really necessarily associate with a specific consumer address. That's a big one because you got big pipes with big water flowing. So what happens is these smart meters that are downstream from that can detect. And so you not only can place them on the addresses that use the water, but you can also incorporate that in the water infrastructure itself between the supply and the address. Bottom line is you're able to electronically notify someone rather than having to go physically inspect all those meters. Wait a second, it looks like your meter's running. We may have a leak here. So as soon as there's some anomaly detected, it notifies the proper folks that can take care of it and address it. I mean, you could even take it further than that. I was saying this to Rhino over the break, that you can actually have it automatically open a ticket up and send it to a technician that's closest to where the leak is to go fix it. And you can take it to that level. By the way, using all that stuff those billionaires built. So that's why. But Austin is, and other cities are too, they're starting to implement this smart meter technology to address this aging water infrastructure we have in this country that I promise waste way more water than data centers use to cool chips. No doubt about it. So there are ways to address this issue. We're highly inefficient in our use of water. Highly inefficient. And new technology is helping our farmers as well efficiently use water when they need it, when they need to supplement and irrigate their crops. I think I told you I lived out in Kern County, California, long time ago, which is one of the most fertile agricultural areas in the world. Giant county that's about a quarter the size of the state of Mississippi. But it's in the desert. Doesn't rain a lot. But the soil is perfectly suited to grow certain crops. And they got those huge, back then, I'm talking 40 years ago, those huge irrigation systems that are on wheels. You've seen them, that the wheels are in between, or in the rows, in between the rows of crops, but in the little drain area there between the rows. And they just wheel them around, turn the sprinklers on. Giant irrigation system, super water pressure. On the C Spire text line, artificial intelligence has been around for a long time and has been demonstrated by the protesters of the New York University commencement graduates. That's it's really good. All you have to do is to handle AOC is let her talk. I would love to know AOC's net worth. She went in broke. She's actually still fairly broke, according to, she's one of the brokest members of Congress. According to her official filings, she's worth about $30,000. And that's on a good day. So Cece in Senatobia says, I want the speaker I want and a large pizza in the next 30 minutes. Talking about the story Rhino shared with us that was at NYU, they were upset that the speaker didn't have sufficient celebrity status, their commencement speaker.
But we had Taylor Swift in 2022.
Keith in Baden says, I thought Al Gore invented the internet. And we got a couple other people say that as well.
Lockbox.
Yep. This is a good one here. Hey, AOC, this is Chris. Hey, AOC, like 6 billionaires basically built your whole daily routine. Your iPhone, a billionaire. Amazon, another. The internet backbone you use all day, billionaires. The gas in your car, billionaires. The apps, cloud, payment, streaming, logistics, all billionaire. Hey, I agree. Their fingerprints are on everything you touch from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep. Great way to put it there, Chris. Not to mention when you go to the store and buy stuff that you, right? Don't forget about the Waltons and think about how they became billionaires by figuring out a way to sell stuff for less than everybody else. And remember,
economies of scale.
Exactly. And utilizing their muscle in the procurement process. Sam Walton had that figured out, though. When he was fired from JCPenney, they told him, you'll never have a career in retail. Remember that? Oh, boy. Missed it just that much. That's such a great American story, is it not? We're out of here today at Itawamba Community College tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.